day late, but we're here. We're
A day
here.
late and $1 short.
That's probably true.
Yeah, well,
I think we have a whole lot of nothing to talk about tonight, so that's a good thing.
Yeah. So that's what we're relying on you in the audience. What do you want to hear about? Yeah.
yeah, I guess it's just new 40K seems like old news, old hat. It's been going on for a while now.
I mean, I guess the boxed game or whatnot it's soon actually going to be released, right? Or was it already released? I know I've certainly seen tons of people who have it now or who recently received it.
I mean, because the experts are painting the models in it, right?
That's
They
true.
sure
That's what
are.
the Warhammer community website has as a I'll say an article showing a bunch of people who I think were sent the game and how they've been working on painting the models. And it's kind of a nice gesture, and it's neat to see a whole bunch of different people. Certainly, there are those that are very technical, and others that are more like approaching things more of just kind of to get a feeling or an emotion across. And I guess we can talk about that later tonight.
Yeah, but I think just new 40K, I feel it's been stretched out so long. And I mean, it really hasn't been that long in the scheme of things, but it's been long enough that I've somewhat lost interest.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of the things you could also say, it's a little harder to be that interested in it when half of the models are just more bog standard Primaris Space Marines. Mind you, I think a lot of them are nice models, and I think certainly for the ones with the bolt pistols and chain swords, it was sort of about time they finally made nicer looking Space Marines equipped as such, but you know, it's still.
I guess also, I mean, we've mentioned it before, but with the game component of it not being that big a thing, like there's, I feel, less to talk about for people who are focused on playing it. There's still all that general talk about, oh, they finally, the points have leaked, or all this, or like, wow, how do the new rules influence this or that? And I feel that, and just the general excitement of finally playing some games again, I feel would give lots and lots to talk about. I mean, hell, you could go and right now and on Twitch watch the Long War podcast and like stream that's going on live right now. I'm sure they're talking about it.
I'm sure they
Maybe they're
are.
even playing games. Maybe they're playing the games.
They
Yeah, I
probably
don't know.
are. Hey, Dave, nice to have you here tonight.
But yeah, so I mean, I feel there's lots of places you could go to hear more about that sort of thing. And with us not kind of being that interested in it, it's just, as you said, Adam, yeah, it's hard to maintain that level of excitement for seeing some more Space Marines, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for those who are excited about Space Marines, I'm happy to say I finally finished painting the Iron Snake Space Marine, so maybe that can be a transition into our regular segment, Hobby Happenings or Hobby Hoedown. And yeah, so the Marine's finally finished. It took I'm sort of ashamed to say maybe even the better part of a month of off and on painting to finish a largely silver Space Marine. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel looks like you kind of were able to learn, test out some new paints, try some things, and I mean, it wasn't, or it's not like you had tons and tons of time,
No, I mean
just
that's
paint
true.
nonstop. So,
If I had, I could have finished him in a few days. I feel.
well, I guess with that in mind, if you did go and, like, let's say, convert another Marine and wanted to paint them, do you think you've learned stuff that you could do it quicker?
I could certainly. I feel finish painting a marine like this in a day or two. I think if I actually
Okay.
had a reasonable amount of time. Like the whole process wasn't really that hard. I mean, there are only a few basic colors. I think probably one of the things that would take the longest is some of the freehand stuff like that, and some of like the iconography. Like a lot of the initial silver work can be like established with an airbrush, and that's kind of what I did here. But then going in and applying some like targeted highlights and like reflections and stuff and like weathering, all of that I feel can be accomplished relatively quickly. And then the leather pouches and stuff like that, that's not really very, like, I've done that a lot. I know how to do that pretty well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could paint some pretty quickly.
Well, with that in mind, if you did convert another Space Marine, what would they look like? What would you do? What's just off the top of
mm,
your head?
I think I would just use the model as another excuse to explore Space Marine weaponry. And I feel maybe I would convert another Space Marine with a smaller bolter. Because I sort of like in this one to one that maybe he's more of a long range specialist, like a sniper or some sort, because his rifle's rather large. So I would sort of feel like making something smaller.
Hmm.
Um, but and then I think I would, in terms of other flourishes and details, like I think I wouldn't add a whole lot. He would have a sidearm like this one, and then I would have the whatever his weapon of choice is. I don't know what helmet he would use. Probably another beaky helmet because they're cool.
Yeah.
And then so yeah, I think the main focus would just be his weapon. And I'd sort of like to. Oh, looks like. Is this? I feel I'd like to explore more with some of the weaponry. Like I feel I say it a lot, but
I mean, it's fine. It's kind of a thing we tend to do, and it's not something that you see that often with GW stuff, to be honest. So.
no. And I mean, I certainly have done a little exploration with that on some of the Imperial Guard that I've worked on, but there are certain weapons like the flamethrowers, melt weapons, and some of those iconic things that I think there's a lot of work that could be done to improve all of that for Space Marines.
Mm-hmm. And I guess we need to read the Iron Snakes, that Abnett novel.
No, yeah, I should try and read that.
Have you read it, Eric?
No,
You're a
unfortunately.
reader.
Yeah, to my shame, no, I have not read it. I guess I've some of the Gaunt's Ghost novels. Or maybe it's only the two of the kind of later ones in the last arc. Or maybe it's not actually the last arc. But some of when they go Salvation's Reach and the following ones and whatnot, there's Iron Stakes Mace Marine in it that accompanies them along with White Scar, Space Marine, and I don't really remember the third.
Okay.
But I don't know. So they were in it a little bit like that. And
Yeah.
I think most of Iron Snakes had a large presence in the Sabbath Worlds Crusade, which is like what all the Gaunt's Ghost novels are focused around. So,
Mhm.
but I feel I would like to read it soon. I've almost finished reading the first book of the Siege of Terra series.
Oh, really?
I don't even remember what it's called.
Did
You
Abnett
sure
write
are
that
a
one?
reader.
Abnett did not.
Okay.
It's shit. Now I don't even remember who wrote it. He wrote John. Maybe it's John French. Let me see.
I'll be honest, it's been a while since I've read any 40k novel. I don't even remember what the last one I read was.
It is John French, and the Solar War. It's called the Solar War.
Okay.
It's the first one. The fourth one in the series was written by Dan Abnett, though.
Okay.
I read the last GW book I read was probably at least 15 years ago.
It's been a few years for me.
Yeah.
Way more than a few. Like I was in high school.
That's a while.
And even though we look like young whippersnappers, we're not that.
Yeah. But no, so it's funny, to be honest. The main reason why I've been reading it is simply to get to the fourth book in this series, which is written by Dan Abnett. And I think maybe there are 6 authors in it that are gonna write the series of 8 books. So 2 of the authors are gonna write 2 of the novels.
Yeah. Actually, Dave, have you read any Black Library novels? I know you haven't been like a long-standing 40k guy, and maybe not even much of a 40k guy to begin with, more just
Into the miniature side of things.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what Abnett does with it, because I feel he does a pretty good job of adding sort of a human element to a lot of the things, and not just Space Marines and stuff exploding. Which, admittedly, I feel a lot of the Horus Heresy novels I've read have been pretty good about that. But I still, of the stuff I've read, I've liked his the best, because of the focus on human characters and emotions and things that seem plausible.
Yeah.
And I feel he'll probably introduce John Grammatis back into the Horus Heresy stuff.
Is he the perpetual?
Yeah, or one of the perpetuals. Which, admittedly, maybe he's also introduced in 2 and 3, but I'm not sure.
He was in like Legion and stuff, right?
Yeah, Legion, and the one when the Word Bearers attack
No
Fear.
Fear.
Destroy. Yeah, he was in that.
Yeah,
There was
I read
another
them.
perpetual on it. And so it was cool. And I feel it was an element that was added to some of the Horus Heresy novels. Because I almost think doesn't the first Horus Heresy novel start with a line like "I was there the day Horus slew the Emperor"?
Yeah.
And maybe that was John Grammatis saying that.
Also in the first novel,
or maybe it was one of the Remembrancers, actually.
So also one of the things that's weird in the first Horus Heresy novel that I don't even remember what it was called, that Dan Abnett wrote. It starts out with
Horus Rising.
Yeah, it starts out with Space Marines like invading a world, like a seemingly like human world, where they have like an emperor, like the emperor of mankind. So it's like kind of like very, but it's not the
Oh,
emperor, and
oh,
like
I
they
had totally
kill
forgotten that.
they kill him. And so for a
Okay.
while, like you're like, what the fuck are they talking about? And then you just find out like, oh, they happened to a world that was kind of
Okay.
set up in a manner very similar to the Imperium of Man, and they approach it with extreme prejudice.
Yeah, because that hell, I don't even like. I think I only read the book once, and that was literally when it was released.
When it was
so
so I read that a few
like
years
over
ago.
10 years ago, so I hardly remember it with the Mournival and stuff.
Yes. And I mean that was pretty good. Like it focused on several of the, I guess were they the Luna Wolves then?
Yes,
The
yeah,
Luna Wolves and some of, and it was with I guess Loken, was that his name?
yeah. Gavriel Loken.
Yeah, with him essentially joining like the inner circle of like top generals of the Luna Wolves. And he is very much a space marine who is kind of very thoughtful and is more introspective than I think some of the other space marines. And so he's much more relatable on like a human level than like some of the other ones like Horus or Abaddon.
Yeah, but no, I ultimately, so yeah, I'm excited to hear or read what Advent
Mm-hmm.
does with it. Because I
Nah,
don't
it's
know.
interesting. Like, I guess like when we started the hobby, like the Horus Heresy and all that other stuff was like kind of like a cornerstone of the narrative behind Warhammer 40,000, but most of it I feel was not, it was just mentioned and there weren't a lot of details about anything. And now like there are so many novels written about it, and it's interesting. I sort of wonder how you should really even approach those novels. Do we think, and like it might even be that the different authors kind of have a different sense of how one should approach them. Like you could certainly approach them as if, oh, this is the canon, this is exactly what happened. But then you could also kind
Mhm.
of approach them along the lines of whoever the story is following, like say it's the Luna Wolves or the Sons of Horus or something, like it's just from their perspective, and whether or not the stuff is actually true or it's just they put it under a lens that was more befitting of
Yeah,
whatever
yeah. I feel
they were trying to
a
say.
lot of the authors and stuff have talked kind of about that 40K is kind of supposed to be looked at from all these different perhaps semi-conflicting views of things, and so it's not always
Yeah.
100% consistent, because as you said, when they went to start writing these, they just kind of had to collect all these White Dwarf issues and
Hmm.
things that had these a few paragraphs here, sentences there, that all talked about the Horus Heresy, sometimes conflicting with one another. And then, like, okay, what do we want to do with this? Where do we want to go with it? And how do we want to expand it?
Yeah, so I
So,
guess sort of because of that, I've always, whenever I've approached a lot of it, like I never really thought like, oh, this is 100% the way it is or how any of that stuff happened. And
yeah,
like I know there are some people who are really excited about the lore and like, oh, and then really
having to
upset.
be historically accurate and
Yeah, or
stuff
really
in a way.
upset if things are changed, or like say Games Workshop writes something that doesn't 100% agree with their lore. Like some of that, I mean, some of it is kind of cringy, and it's like they could have done better. But for other things like Horus Heresy related stuff, I'm sort of more under the mind that you, as the reader or just the person observing, you have to come up with sort of your own conclusions, and you can interpret things the way you want to, and say even make small changes based on how you want to understand things, sort of.
Yeah. I don't think it's that important to be super strict about it. It's not like we have photographic evidence of this. Like it's all made up. So it's I
Yeah.
think well, yeah, it just doesn't matter that much. But yeah, so I guess Dave, I would suggest if you are interested in trying to read some of this stuff, I would suggest reading something by Dan Abnett. Probably either the first Gaunt's Ghost novel, The First and Only, which is about kind of an Imperial Guard regiment, or it's the Eisenhorn trilogy, which starts with a book called Xenos, which is sort of about the Inquisition and whatnot. And honestly, that's maybe the best place to start. Like Black Library says it all the time, and a lot of people do, that it's a fairly good introduction to the setting, even if you don't know that much about it.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I feel his books and such were some of the reason that I stayed engaged with 40K, because it injected sort of some realism in motivations from both sides, like the good and kind of evil side, that made it seem more believable and not just comic book heroes or larger than life evil villains and stuff like that.
Because I
It's
mean, in
pretty
many regards, that a lot it can really come across as heavy-handed. Like a lot of the enemies of the Imperium, like Chaos and stuff, they're very much just portrayed as they're evil and bad, and
Mhm.
in many regards, that's typically not that interesting, or it's
Mhm.
certainly not as relatable.
And it's cool, like it's apparent that he spends a lot of time studying stuff, and I've listened to some interviews of him talking about his process, but like he must do lots of research, reading books and such, to try to, like, when he wrote Titanicus, which is a book about the big robots, Titans and such, and he must have spent a long time reading all sorts of books and such about submarine warfare and tank warfare, because
Hmm.
he thought that was maybe the closest representation of kind of the claustrophobia and terror that he pictured being like in a Titan would be. And I feel that it really comes through. And even just in some of the Gaunt's Ghost novels, when there are like tank commanders and stuff, like it's apparent that he tried his best to add some things that would make it seem more plausible and believable. And I think it really helps.
Yes.
It really helps. And again, he often focuses more on different human characters and how they see some of the crazy and awful things that happen. So it's not just awesome space marines running around with bolters. Because I mean, well, that's cool to a point. I feel it can quickly lose its interest because it's just not relatable at all.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. Hey, meandering shade.
Yeah. Hey, nice to have you
Nice to
here.
have you.
But yeah, so yeah, I would read Xenos probably. Though, admittedly, First and Only, which I mentioned also, that was literally like the first book, like what I think like the first book the Black Library released. Like, I guess Ian Watson had written like Space Marine, but that was,
Mhm.
I think, that was before Black Games Workshop fiction sort of department. The Black Library was even a thing.
Actually, this is a pretty big tangent, but do you remember the old Black Library symbol? It was like a hooded skull. Like, it was so cool.
Yeah, it was like a hooded skull with kind of like a skeletal hand on a book, kind of.
Yeah, it was really cool. And then they changed it to whatever they have now, which is kind of meh. It's fine. But the old Black Library symbol was awesome.
The new one is just some
What even is it? I don't
Yeah.
even remember.
It's a
like a
hammer
hammer with a.
with like a circle around it.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
It's not terrible, but
I mean, I will
Compared
admit the old symbol, like you could, if you looked at it, like at a glance, you might not even realize what it is. And so maybe that's not like a great
Mhm.
I
logo.
remember somebody who thought it looked like a lighter or something.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I see it. I
Um,
see that.
so yeah, like maybe it wasn't the greatest logo, but I always liked it, and I thought it was much more intriguing
Yeah,
than the current logo.
agreed. Agreed.
But yeah. Well, so I guess we've kind of gone off on a long tangent, but yeah, so I finished painting that Space Marine. Um, Eric, you finished that Evangelion, right? And you also started doing some decal work on it, am I right?
Yeah, no, I finally decided to do work with some decals. Like I purchased some aftermarket like water slide decals and just I mean it's kind of pathetic. I only put on one decal, but I
Wow.
did that
I don't know, it looks
because
pretty good.
I haven't like worked with decals in so long.
Yeah, I hear
But
that.
so I did and I used some of Tamiya's Mark Fit decal solution to do it,
Yeah.
and it worked pretty well. Like I'm pleased that it worked. I mean, they also make a Mark Fit Strong, which is a more aggressive version of the solution, and it'll be
Oh.
interesting to see how the version that I have works for some of like the more difficult stuff, like the little fins on the Ava. They have like a lot of panel lines and such that there's a big decal that goes on them that kind of crosses over the panel lines and such. And I could see that needing like a good version of these decal solutions to sort of almost like melt it such that it would uh conform to the panel lines and such and look like it's actually painted on rather than just being like a sticker or something.
Okay. Do you have that?
I don't have the strong one,
Okay.
just the normal one. But the
Why do
normal
you
one
even
should do
have
it.
the Why do you even have the Tamiya decal? Like, did you suspect you were gonna get some decals to use?
Yeah, I figured
It
I'd
doesn't
do.
it doesn't seem like something, "Oh, I'm going to get some Tamiya paints, like, I better make sure I pick up the decal."
It
I
was
recently got some. Thinking that
My
maybe
goodness.
I would add some decals and stuff to that Iron Snake Space Marine, and then kind of just use that as a reference and paint over like some of the shapes, but I didn't end up doing that.
I think I
Partially
got
because
it.
I'd have to find the decals.
I think I got it because I thought maybe I'd want to use some sort of generic numerical decals or something on that Arvis lighter that I haven't started to paint.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
I think it was that. Or maybe on some of the tanks that I've been kind of messing
shit.
around with. So that was the idea. But because there are tons of decal solutions, but I feel the one that I feel is talked about probably the most is Micro Soul and Micro Set, which they're like two separate decal solutions. Like I think one you put on first to help you place the decal, and then after it's placed, you put on the micro sole, which it and when you put that on, like you don't want to touch or move the decal around anymore because it like essentially starts to break down the decal such that it can like reset go into the recesses and whatnot. So if you try to move it while that's happening, like you just tear them and ruin them.
Okay.
But I think this Mark Fit is just like a combination product. So I don't know, how well it works in comparison to the others because I haven't really used them. But I mean, it seemed to work well here. And I read that even if you don't have the stronger version, you can just keep slowly applying coats of the stuff to the decal, and it'll slowly get better. So I don't know. I'll have to see if I try on more difficult pieces. But I'm sure it's just some sort of acidic solution that softens the decals and such. So
Yeah. Oh, actually, we just have another comment by DVMN6653. We're asking what's our opinion on the Horus Heresy. I guess, do you have like something a little more specific than that? Is this referring to in
the
general?
Emperor was an asshole and bad father.
Like that notion, or like the novels in general, or the game system, all that stuff. Like I feel
Forge World needs to update the Horus Heresy rule system, but I feel just in a general sense about the Horus Heresy, I feel for a while I was somewhat concerned that the Black Library and Games Workshop was going to go into it and sort of remove the mystery, because with the small amount of background that they had written, it added this interesting mystery that you could kind of think about the Primarchs and such. There was such larger than life and just imagine. But I think they've done their due diligence and made it, I think, better than it had been. Like the author, or at least most of the authors and novels involved, it actually ended up pretty good and added additional depth to it rather than just like bolter porn,
Yeah, and I think on
So
top of that, despite them really spelling out, say, a lot of the different events and stuff that they only maybe had a sentence or two talking about, they, in at least a lot of the novels, they still have enough like mystery and like unknown elements to them that I think you can kind of come to your own conclusions about certain things. But I mean, I guess even saying that, I know there were certain things that they did and changed that I didn't necessarily like. And like I guess there are so many like potential spoilers and stuff that you can say. But like for instance, Dan Abnett has a book called Legion about the Alpha Legion, and that I think was a great example of how they helped sort of explain like who the Alpha Legion were, but at the same time presented most of the important things in a way that you didn't quite know what they were thinking or like where they were going, and they kind of allowed you to make your own conclusions. And so like I thought that was really good. And then later on, I don't know what's it called. There's another novel about the Alpha Legion where
I think John French maybe wrote that.
Where there's a few Marines on Terra, and it sort of starts their sort of war against the Imperium, and that, I think, that was a little more clear cut about like what was going on, and some of the stuff that happened in that I didn't really like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was bad, but it wasn't Praetorian of Dorn, it was called. It was by John French. But yeah, as you said, I think like Legion was a great example of like everyone kind of knows, oh, the Alpha Legion, they're sneaky, whatever. Like maybe they aren't evil, yada yada, but they probably are. And I feel Dan really built that up, and it was primarily through the eyes of some of their kind of indoctrinated humans that they had recruited as kind of espionage sort of agents and such. So even though you were learning about the Alpha Legion, it was still kind of one step removed from these human eyes, such that you still didn't necessarily get all this information directly from those characters, such that you learned all this additional information, but at the end of the day, it's still not 100% clear what side they were on, if
Yeah,
they
so you
were
could kind of come to
actually,
your
and
own
it was really
conclusions.
great.
So I think
And so,
overall, I still really like the Horus Heresy, and a lot of the, because I guess one thing that's sort of neat about it is very much like a human war, even if it involves like space marines and stuff like that. Um, so it's a little easier for like a human audience to sort of understand what's going on, whereas if it's just them fighting like exterminating aliens and stuff like that, while they could make that really interesting, I feel more often than not it's just like, oh, and then they went to another world and there were these weird aliens and they approached them with extreme prejudice and killed them, and that's not necessarily
yeah.
as always that interesting.
And admittedly, I'm kind of glad that, because it did, after like what, over 10 years of releasing novels and like 40 or so Horus Heresy novels, I'm kind of glad they finally like, you know what, we're ending this, but they made it into another series such
Hmm.
that it kind of was sort of a simple place that, oh, I read a handful of these books, and like you could just go in and start there and finish it. Or if you wanted to read more, you could. And I think that was kind of nice.
Yeah.
And from being most of the way through the Solar War, it seems to be pretty good, and it is adding kind of new interesting elements to this kind of the actual siege on Terra, and it's brought back some of the remembrancers and such from kind of the initial books. So like I think it's been good. And also even just Forge Worlds take on the Horus Heresy, I think has been good too. All their black books
I mean,
in which
mind
they
you, I haven't read any of the newer ones, but like at least the initial first few ones, um, those I think were neat. Those they were sort of more like by the book and a historical context of just like a war was fought. There were battles here, here, and here, etc. And that I thought was kind of a neat way to approach
yeah.
it. Like it was very far, it was much further removed. Like they weren't all necessarily talking about individual units or characters as much. Whereas like I feel in a lot of the like Warhammer 40,000 Codex books, or at least I guess I haven't read any of the ones recently, but I remember a few years ago I would read most of the Codex books, and I just remember like there were some really bad ones where the sense of scale when they wrote about different wars was awful. Like they'd be talking about like the destruction of like Cadia or something, and then they'd jump into a segment talking about how one Valkyrie flew down in there and destroyed 2 dreadnoughts or something stupid, and it's just like that completely.
Takes you out of, yeah, because it's just, this is a whole planet, a war that's going on a planetary scale, or even kind of the whole the solar system around Adia, and they're talking about, yeah, a Valkyrie or like a single Lehman Russ. It's just like really takes you out. But yeah, the Horus Forge World's Horus Heresy books were nice because they were written almost as like a historical military text of what transpired and the important battles in certain campaigns or something. And I think that also just again went back to building these things up in a way that made them seem more legitimate and not just like a cash grab.
Yeah. Though I guess mind you, like, unfortunately, like after Alan Ball, after he passed away, like Forge Worlds really, the state in which they release those larger black books has really plummeted. And like, do they even release one a year now?
I don't even know if they do anymore. I mean, admittedly, it's not to say like there were a lot of people on the team that worked with Alan, so it's not like he just did it all. But I think it certainly does seem like after his unfortunate passing was kind of the start of the just the general slowdown of the release of any of that stuff, such that, and I guess there was also the Forge World now does so much with specialist games, but as a
Yeah.
result, I feel all that just led to the Horus Heresy game sort of system has fallen somewhat by the wayside just because there aren't releases, and many of those releases are subpar looking Space Marines. But
Yeah, they
yeah,
are.
so the Horus Heresy is cool. I'm glad they've done stuff with it, despite my initial sort of reservation about it.
I see. I feel in many regards it's the type of thing, like a lot of the stuff, like I at least was very cautious about it because oftentimes, like a lot of the things you think about, the the Grey Knights and the Custodes and stuff like that. Like for a long time, there really weren't any models of that stuff, and they only talked about the stuff in passing, and they kind of had a. They only really
Yeah,
lived in
agree.
your imagination, and like they were really cool. And then Games Workshop decided, like, let's make them into entire armies, and we'll make them like bog standard units. They all look the same. There aren't individual whatever. And then it's just like that, I feel, sort of took away some of the interest, or like what made some of those
Yeah.
unique, like, Space Marine, I'll say chapters, but they're not really chapters, interesting. And now, like, when you think of Custodes or the Grey Knights, like, you just think of the standard models. And because, like, the Custodes and stuff, for instance, each one of those was supposed to be like an individual who like
Yeah,
had their own way of like acting, interacting, all that other stuff. And like that certainly doesn't come across when you look at the model range. So yeah, I guess there's always a danger when you go and
Yeah,
try and
yeah.
expand upon certain things that people really
Mm-hmm.
like. And so I guess on top of that, like
Yep.
when they started making the Primarch models, like Simon Egan and them started making those models, like I feel overall all of the models are pretty good, and they're better than I would have thought. They're better than I thought they'd be. But in some regards you could still sort of say, like, I almost wish they were never made. But then again, most of the models are really cool, so I guess I am glad they made them, but
Yeah.
well, so yeah, we've talked about that a lot. Hopefully that sort of answered your question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Eric, you finished that, or
The General Assembly, and now I just have to go in and do more of the decal work.
on that Evangelion. It looks great.
No, I feel it's a pretty impressive model. Went together nicely and without a huge amount of effort. I think it looks pretty complete, I
He looks
guess.
pretty boss.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll do some panel lining. I don't know what color would be the best to do the panel lining with.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm not actually sure.
But yeah, well,
Tamiya makes a lot of different panel line colors, so you could find something.
not purple though.
Yeah, I don't think they do make purple, but they do make like 11 different ones or something. It's a lot.
Oh, is it really that many?
It's
Damn.
a lot, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll see. I guess, and it's so hot here in my apartment that it makes it hard for me to want. It's like hot and humid, so it makes it hard for me to want to do much painting and stuff like that. But well,
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, so that's what we've been up to. I feel I'm not exactly sure what now that I finished that Space Marine, what I'm gonna work on next. I have a bunch of things like, I sort of feel like I have to get back to painting that Eldar pirate that I converted for the Bone Reaper stuff a while ago. I also, I guess, related to that, I have this old Dark Eldar metal model, which I was sort of thinking I might try and paint that model to experiment with color schemes and stuff for the Bone Reaper Eldar pirate that I made. And I thought it would
Yeah.
also be kind of fun to finally paint this model. So I got it out. I took off. I had a base for it, a bad looking base. But I took the model off and cut off the little slotted part. And
okay.
I've started to drill holes in his feet to pin the model onto a new base. But I think
Yeah.
I'll have to. It's sort of funny looking at the model itself. Once you cut that slot off the base, the feet. See if I can get it to focus right. The feet are anything but like flat. So like even if
Oh.
I have them set on a flat base, like it's not gonna look great. So I think what I almost have to do is use some like Milliput or another putty to kind of flatten out his feet,
Yeah.
such that
Okay.
once I pin the model on a base, and I have a few of those like little tech deck bases that I modified and painted. So let me actually try and find them. Oh, yeah, like here's one of them. Like I could probably choose one of these and attach the model.
Yeah. Okay.
But even there, like, well, they are like flat bases, like they're not.
Yeah.
There's so
somewhat
much,
geared.
so many like varying like levels that like probably will actually be kind of.
You guys, I think I'm gonna go to bed. Like, I'm tired. I'm sorry for not really adding anything worthwhile to the conversation.
Oh, no
Ah,
worries,
no
Greg.
worries.
Yeah,
People
no.
should
Good luck,
listen to Greg's
everybody.
SoundCloud page.
Thanks for jumping in and listening, everybody. I'll talk to y'all later.
Yeah. See you, Greg.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, Meandering Shade, your Bone Reaper challenge model, you started it? That's cool. Okay, so now you have space to like actually do work and stuff again. That's good. Yeah, I feel I really need to get back to painting the one that I've converted, because I spent so much time converting the model and sculpting the model that I just need to get to it. But I think I will paint this Eldar model here in a similar scheme to kind of experiment with different colors. And then I think it would be sort of neat to show people this model, because I don't think it's really... It's certainly a lot of these like older Dark Eldar models you don't really see around very much. And I think people would kind of like... Like, I don't even know if I've ever seen one painted.
Yeah, I don't know if I have either.
So I think that would be kind of fun. So maybe I will paint this model and then use that to spring into the other Eldar model. I also have this converted Haber Necromunda model that I should try and paint.
So many models to paint.
Yeah.
But I guess getting it painted, some of all the different projects would be cool.
Yeah, if we compare the model to the Space Marine, like the Necromunda, the Lock Gangers are huge. Like,
Yeah,
they're the
wow.
size of a Primaris Space Marine.
Yeah, she would fit in there nicely.
Yeah, so I don't know what to think about that.
Just not really scaled right.
No, I feel that's the general conclusion you would come to. Not really scaled right. But that's fine.
It is what it is.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
yeah.
it's Necromunda, so it doesn't matter maybe quite as much, but
No, it does not. Yeah, so that's what we've been working on.
I guess I have this. I'm not sure if you can see this, but this from Wilhelm Miniatures have another one of these bone trees that the last of the set that I need to try to paint.
Yeah,
Well, I
that'll
guess
be
I need
cool.
to do some, I don't know, milliput work to fill in some bubbles and stuff, which it wouldn't be like absolutely critical because it is terrain and it looks kind of, but I still feel like I should.
No, I understand that.
But it's nice, and I feel it would be good if I would paint it soon before I. Or I mean, admittedly, I've forgotten how I did it.
Me and Jade, you're right. Games Workshop does need to get on and make true scale Primaris Space Marines.
Yeah, that would be great.
They need to do
Would
it.
be great.
Well, I guess if you really want that, you could probably just get some of the Forge World Primarch models and say that they are Primaris scaled or something. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, so that's what we've been working on. Is there anything on the like Warhammer community side that we can talk about or we want to talk about?
I don't know if there's anything too exciting. Is anyone in the chat excited about this weekend, which I think finally new 40K is going to be in stores for everybody?
Yeah, I guess it is this weekend, isn't it?
Yeah, no.
Well, I
mean,
can say I finished painting that Space Marine in honor of new 40K. Ho ho.
Yeah, it's true.
Doing my part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess now that it will be released, they can start kind of previewing other things.
Oh, Dave, you have 4
Which-
hate figures to finish a tribe. That's not too many.
Nah, yeah, that's not bad.
I'm confident you can complete them.
Yeah, I guess I just need to get back into the swing of things to feel I've been somewhat slow at the thing.
The community site has something about join new edition celebrations. They have a post, and probably the only thing that's interesting about it is towards the end they have a picture where it says artist's impression of the Indominus launch celebration. And God, is it? It's not showing up, is it? Oh, come on. Let's try and.
Yeah, there's
There it is.
the hats.
Where they added like little party hats to the different models.
Yeah, it's cute.
That's funny.
It's cute. Oh, so meandering shade, you have a set of the trees too. That's cool. Yeah, I'm glad I got most of the set of everything other than the jaw there I just showed. I'm glad I just painted them all at that time, because otherwise it would have just been so easy to let them sit there. But I guess with that, it would be great if I finished this last one.
Yeah.
It would be great. And I mean, I have that one of the snails or two that could be painted. Like that could be fun.
No, yeah,
guess
I have some of his other like this like weird looking grotesque humanoid
Forest
thing.
Dweller, maybe they call it.
Yeah, I forget what they call them. Like him all
You made a really big version of that essentially too.
there are a lot of tiny little like um little what I guess are little air bubbles in the mold, and there are all these tiny little circles all over the model that I'll have to go through and remove. And I sort of feel like if I'd want to do something with this model, I'd probably want to convert it somehow. I don't know what I'd do though. It's already pretty creepy.
It is.
But I feel it could be
green.
a kind of a good model to experiment with painting like a really weird, interesting paint scheme, or trying to paint it really quickly. Just
Paint it with oils. Just use oils to paint everything. Get nice blends and gradients. That's what
no,
you
it's a good
want.
idea. I have a bunch of oils.
Or at least, yeah, I feel that that could be something that could be done.
I even have like a paint set of like flesh colors for with oils, so maybe I could do that. Well, lots of things to consider and think about.
Yeah, I feel there's so much stuff that could be done. Just have to keep pushing on and actually doing stuff, which is why I have to finish this Ava, and probably, like I've been saying for weeks now, just try to paint the Arvis lighter.
Well, you
'Cause, yeah, I
finished
guess
the
they
Sisters of
showed.
Battle.
That's true. That is true. But then I feel the little lighter could be a transport for them or something like that. So that would be nice. I guess.
Related to
They,
the lighter, they have the new little tiny plastic ones, right?
yeah, there was a post on the community page about, what do you call it, Aeronautica Imperialis, and maybe showed the stat cards and stuff for it. It's a pretty cute little thing, which is
Yeah.
kind of neat. So that means they must have like a digital file for that small version, which it sure would be great if they would put that to use and make like a larger 28 millimeter plastic one. Like, I think people would be really excited about that.
That
Or
would be great.
honestly, even just redesigning the resin one
Mhm.
to fit together better would also be great. Because I feel I did an adequate job on the one I assembled, but there's still stuff I would have done differently if I would do it again, primarily with the cockpit. But it is what it is. Like, it just, stuff didn't fit together well enough to
Yeah.
be great. And then it's so heavy too. But yeah, whatever. It is what it is. But if I could finish painting it, that would be incredible.
That would be incredible. Or you can use your airbrush and all your different like oils and enamels to give it all sorts of different pin
That's-
washes and
That's
filters.
my hope.
And you can put decals and stuff on it like you've been practicing.
Yeah, I feel I need to find some decals to use.
I'm sure you can. I mean, I'm sure there are tons of high quality, like just say standard decals, because for something like that, you probably don't really need too much more than like standard symbols or like numbers and stuff.
Yeah.
And if you really wanted, you could have like Imperial Eagles and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
we'll see. Yeah, that little tiny Arva slider is great. And these little vulture gunships are cool too. Some of these I'd sort of feel like would be kind of good, like these gunships. Buying them just to get their tiny little like weapons and stuff. Like I feel they could kind of fit well on like 28 millimeter 40K models.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it would be feel you'd sort of have to see them in person though to get a better sense of how well they'd fit, but I think they could probably work. Like these tiny little Gatling guns.
Yeah, they're cool.
As well, if any of you have been listening to us for a while, you know we like hound Games Workshop relentlessly about their weapon scaling. And some of these could be used to kind of remedy some of that.
Mm-hmm.
I guess one thing that we mentioned a little earlier on the community side, they also put up something showing some of the Necron models painted by certain people in the community, and I thought that was kind of neat to see.
True.
And there's kind of like a whole collection of different things, some that have focused on like really like technical like skill, others who focused more on just kind of like weathering and stuff like that, and just like kind of emotion and kind of getting a certain character to their models. Like I mean here, like Richard Gray, like he's very good at doing like non-metallic metals and like really having a dark grim look to like whatever he paints, and like that's like
Mm-hmm.
no exception with the model he painted here, the like the Lord thing. I feel in general, like most of the people painting them, like there's a lot of effort in getting kind of like glowing effects to like the models.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it's kind of neat to see like what people are doing with the models. Like Mangle from Mangle Miniatures, he's painted all sorts of stuff. And his are kind of following a pretty traditional scheme, but they look really nice.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess it's just good to see them showcasing some other, other artists and such that aren't just directly in,
Hmm.
a part of GW and such.
And Johan, the one he painted looks cool. He's like using some like orange colors, and there's like dirt and stuff very visible on like the model itself, rather than say just the base, which I think is cool. Very much gives you the sense that he kind of arose up out of the ground.
Hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, they're cool. And I hopefully the Warhammer community, they've been at least pretty good about it, like showing stuff from the community, but I feel the more they kind of try and highlight what different artists and hobbyists are working on and doing, probably the better.
Yeah,
And
I agree. And they have that newer podcast too that, I mean, admittedly has all been kind of GW people other than the Jonathan Hartman one, but that's still a step in that direction. And it would be cool if this was continued more and they would get some of these other people on. Like, I think that would be great.
their most recent episodes with Ben Johnson, I started listening to that. I'll have to finish listening to it. But yeah, I don't know. All the episodes are pretty good and getting different perspectives
Yeah.
from different members of the team and putting like a face to some of the other people and stuff as well. So I feel like oftentimes Games Workshop, like there are a few people that people really know, and most of the other people, like they're kind of like a nameless entity, or like an unknown entity that you kind of hear some of the names thrown around a little bit, but you don't really
Hmm.
get much more than that. And I feel this podcast, and like all of the podcasts they've been working on as of late, are kind of nice, showing more of a human element to the company.
Yeah.
Um, I guess they also had like a little preview of new things from Forge World, but I don't think they really had a whole lot to show with that, did they? Which I guess
I
sort
don't
of
think so.
brings up the notion of like Forge World in general, like
Well,
there.
because I think haven't they, like, Forge World, just every week they cycle, like the first week, the first Tuesday of every month or something is Necromunda, then the second is Aeronautica, the third is Titanicus, and the fourth is the Horus Heresy, or something to that extent. So, and because of that, um, it that I think just feeds into this idea that the Horus Heresy seems kind of dead.
Yeah, no, I sort of agree with that. Like um in their Sunday preview, let's see if I'm trying to get it. Okay, I got it up here. Um, I've stopped really paying attention to like what Forge World does because they release so few models now, and it's focused around so many different things. I guess now they're showing stuff about Adeptus Titanicus, which mind you was cool. Like these models look great,
Yeah, well,
tiny,
aren't yeah they're going up for pre-order this week, which
tiny renditions of their Titans.
there's still a lot of stuff that has been at least somewhat revealed that hasn't been released, like these Titans, which I guess are being released. But then there's still, like, remember how for Necromunda there were those Ogren that Ogren warband that was pretty cool looking. Like, they still
Oh,
haven't been released. There's all those dumb looking Escher models. So, like, I feel there was a lot of stuff that was kind of revealed, and maybe some of it would have already been released if not for the delay due to the coronavirus sort of shut down. So who knows though?
That's true. They're still doing Middle Earth stuff. Been a long, long time since I've played any of that.
Well, we never actually played that one though.
That's true.
We played the Lord of the Rings stuff. There have been many editions of it now, I feel. Maybe in the future we should look into seeing if like Internet Explorer or something works better.
Yeah, I probably need to do that because
I mean, Internet Explorer kind of sucks, but it still might.
Google Chrome just doesn't work well with
Yeah.
Streamlabs for whatever reason now. It's kind of annoying.
Yeah, well.
There's always something, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Always something. Well, so I mean, for one thing, we could sort of continue to chat as I work more on this Dark Eldar model, pinning his feet. You know, maybe I'll even eventually, I think I need, as I sort of mentioned early in the stream, I think I need to do some sculpting to flatten his feet a little better, such that he fits on the base better. So one thing that we can kind of laugh about, that we've probably talked about it before, if you're doing a lot of pinning, I would recommend you get like one of the little Tamiya pin vices. They're much nicer than the one Games Workshop they sell, which I guess they call it a drill, correct, Eric?
Yeah.
They don't call it a pin vise, which is sort of, that in itself kind of makes you
the problem.
Yeah, because if you look at it, do you remember the smallest pin or the smallest drill bit that they give you in it is like massive? And like it's probably larger than any that I would actually want to use.
Yeah, I think it's 2 millimeters, I guess.
Yeah, that's a lot. And I guess, yeah, I feel for the most part you want to have a pin vise that can accept a wide range of sized bits, because like you never really know quite what you'll want, in particular if you're drilling out gun barrels. Even despite that most GW weapons are huge, a lot of the pins they give you, I think, are just they're too big. Like for the most part, I think when you're pinning stuff, even you don't really want to use like a paper clip or anything like that, because they're typically a little too big.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
a lot of Games Workshop things, the things you would want to pin are getting smaller and smaller, which make things kind of tricky.
Looking at some of these Evangelion decals, it looks like they give you duplicates of some of the harder ones. So I kind of just like, yeah, you might fuck these up, so we gave you some more.
That's good. That's good.
Should they even give you like a decal to wrap around the tiny entry plug
Oh, really?
to like color it right? But in the instructions they mention if you're using the sticker form, to like not put it in there if you like into the AVE if you've used the sticker.
Because then you probably couldn't get it out anymore.
Yeah. That's right.
it's kind of interesting doing stuff with these like white metal models. Like they're much harder to trim and deal with. Like I've done just cutting off the tab on the bottom of the feet. Like I think next time I need to use this blade for anything, an X-Acto for anything, I'll have to change the blade. Because it really wrecks. Really wrecks them blades.
Yeah.
I have one of these little Tamiya sanding sponges. I dip the feet of the model in water, and now I'm gonna
Go at it. Yeah, and it's a pretty high grit one too.
Yes, this is 600.
Or low grit,
Yeah.
whatever. It's relatively coarse.
It worked pretty well. Let's see how well it fits on. Guess do I have just a standard flat base? Here's the base to the Zote model that I'm working on. We'll see how well does. It's actually pretty good now. Now that I sanded it a little. It's pretty well. Yeah, like look at the feet. The feet on this Eldar model are they're so big and thin. They kind of look like clown feet.
Yeah, they do.
But it's such a weird model. Like look at the size of this, like maybe this is a Dark Lance or something. Like that's ridiculous. But that's Eldar for you. What's the funny thing is, like, I think the size of this Eldar actually would probably fit pretty well on scale with the old standard Space Marine models. But not at all if you'd compare it to, say, some of the newer Necromunda models. Like, look at that.
Yeah, damn.
That's crazy. Like,
damn.
Doesn't even... He, like, comes up to, like, the head of the model comes up to, like, the belly. Like, ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Yeah, it's bad. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, God. Yeah, it's weird looking at the... Or actually, so here's another fun model. Here's an old metal bloodletter model. Look at that. That's not a good looking model.
Yeah, no, those old models kind of sucked.
They did kind of suck. No, but yeah, so I think maybe I will actually paint this model next. It would certainly be interesting. He has, I guess, a Harlequin's Kiss as well, so it's like kind of a weird amalgamation of different weapons and ideas.
Yeah.
Probably a little more interesting than most of the newer, like Dark Eldar and Eldar models. Yeah, so I don't know. You have anything else you'd like to talk about, Eric, or anyone in the
I don't
chat? Any of you
I
have
don't
something
think
you're
I have much.
interested in talking about or hearing us talk about? Like, I think we've largely. Yeah, the scale creep is crazy. Do I have.
Yeah, it's something else.
I can get out a normal space marine, or
Yeah, it'd be great if there was more consistency, but I feel it's just the nature of things. And with, I guess, just with how much,
well, yeah. See,
or
look,
just
if
the
you look at
time scale of making things.
yeah, if you look at this, here's like an Iron Warrior space or an Iron Armor space marine. Like that actually works okay scale wise
Yeah.
with this Eldar model. So, in many regards, like a lot of the older models, in some ways, were kind of scaled okay. And like these space marines, while they look pretty janky, if you don't if you always keep their helmets on, it's a little easier to convince yourself that they're not quite as awful as they really
Yeah.
are, because you can't quite tell how big their heads would be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, unsupervised darkness. Yeah, the Perry miniatures, they're actually where they tend to actually try to maintain at least a somewhat realistic scale, and actually like more true scale, and actually 28 millimeter and not like 32 millimeter and such. So I'm sure they're much smaller.
So in many regards, what's like kind of really damning about GW scaling, like these old Marines, if you compare them to like the plastic Cadians, it's like they're literally the same size.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Like, how did they let that happen? Guess the
Sure did.
Cadians were always some of the biggest, toughest guard around. So maybe it's that. We'll say it's that.
Yeah, must be that.
Nothing else would explain it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, let's. And then let's bring the. Yeah, see here, like if you compare the Primaris next to one of these old Cadians, it looks a lot better. Scale-wise.
It does. It sure does.
But then they largely decided that the Cadians weren't really correct. They weren't really in scale, so like they reworked stuff and have been changing it ever since. Probably a little closer. What they want are like the Genestealer cultists, and they work out okay compared to the Primaris. I feel sometime I should paint one of the Genestealer cultist models, but I don't know if I can bring myself to do it. At least not without converting it somehow.
Yeah, converting the auto gun to be better to fit with this that Sister badly converted. And...
Oh, did I not? Oh, I think. Oh, yeah, I might not have actually. Did I glue him together? Maybe I did. I don't know. Stick him back together. These Genestealer cultists overall are pretty nice. I feel if you made their feet a little smaller, like I'd really like them. But I guess they're in heavy duty, like mining suits and stuff, so we can cut them some slack.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think all of the little Perry miniatures, like the size of like the swords and weapons and stuff like that, I feel like they're just much they look a lot better compared to most of the Games Workshop stuff. Because they're not so oversized.
Yeah, they're a lot better.
Well, actually, if we want to talk about scale and range, let's bring in the Bandai Space Marine. He's coming to say hi. I know everyone wanted to see him.
Hey, Marine.
He's here.
Yeah, meandering shade. Yeah, you're right in the fact that I feel when GW started out, all their models were kind of about just to have tokens or representations of units for the game and such. So yeah, scale wasn't, and consistency wasn't a huge deal. But I feel now that they've gotten the advent of the technology and just better sculptors and just the community as a whole growing up and trying to be better and better, I think it's now more of a thing than it had been.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I mean, it's something now more people say value and think about with their models.
Yes, certainly.
And certainly if you're trying to get a sense of... Sometimes having a nice sense of scale in models can really add a lot to whatever you're trying to do. And particularly with like Space Marines and stuff like that. A lot of the lore and stuff is talking about like how frightening and large they are. And if they just aren't in model form, it kind of takes a lot away from them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
heroic
don't know. So
scale.
maybe we're draw this to a close.
Yeah, I think we can. I guess, yeah, thanks everybody for joining us and chatting about various things. Sorry we're a day late, but thanks for joining us nonetheless.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I guess if there's ever anything you'd like to hear us talk about at some point or any comments or suggestions, feel free to message us via Instagram or honestly even just comment on like the YouTube comment section or something.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so it was nice to talk with all of you. Keep on enjoying the hobby. Stay safe, and we will talk to you again soon.
Yep.